Imagine your standard ecchi harem series. Picture all the interesting relationships. Then, remove the romance. Would it still be worth reading? Can an ecchi harem series survive without the romance? Well, the series I'm reviewing today is such an ecchi harem series, sans romance. And hopefully by the end of the review, I'll have answered those questions. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Kono Subarashii Sekai ni Shukufuku wo, or Gifting the Wonderful World with Blessings. Saito Kazuma was your standard video gaming NEET, but in his last moments on Earth, he died trying to save a girl from being run over by an oncoming truck. When he gets to heaven, he meets the great goddess Aqua, who gives him two options. He can either bask in a warm glow and talk to other dead people for all of eternity, or he can be reborn in a fantasy kingdom with one blessing and the task of defeating the evil Demon King. Given that our protagonist was none too keen on doing nothing but chatting until the end of time, he chose the latter option. Also, since Aqua was being obnoxious, Saito chose to take her with him as his blessing. He then arrives on the fantasy world and proceeds to discover three things. 1. The world operates on RPG mechanics. 2. His base stats, other than luck, are crap, and he has no starting equipment. 3. Aqua is completely useless. We then watch as he struggles, not to defeat the Demon King, but more or less to survive, try to pay off debts, and grow a party with other incompetents, including a lolly mage, a masochist tank, and an occasional lich. Maybe it's just because of Schadenfreude, but this story is pretty darn hilarious. We have four main characters in this series, our protagonist and his small harem of 3 female party members, none of which have any particular romantic interest in him. Saito Kazuma, our protagonist, is the only intelligent member of his party, or at very least the only one who has any amount of common sense. He's pragmatic, has flexible morals, and while being a bit of a pervert, is at least fairly honest about it. He also happens to be pretty weak, with low enough stats that he's only able to unlock the most basic class, Adventurer. Following Saito in order of introduction, we have Aqua, a happy-go-lucky spoiled goddess, who is only occasionally capable of well-reasoned thought. She retains enough of her goddessly power that after being sent to the mortal realm, she's able to start off as an archpriest right off the bat. With these powers, she's able to do impressive things, like being eaten by giant toads and slowing them down. Yeah. But actually, that's one of the most useful things she does early in the story. Next up, we have Megumin, a chibi wizard of the Crimson Demon race. Sounds powerful, right? Well, she's also an explosion maniac who refuses to put any skill points into any skill other than explosion. And since explosion is a mana-intensive spell, she can only use it once a day. Incidentally, she's also pretty good at being eaten by toads after she's used her explosion spell. Lastly, we have Darkness, a righteous, beautiful, blonde female knight. She also happens to be a huge masochist, and of course, she acts as the tank for the party. Unfortunately, she's refused to put any skills into attacking abilities, so she's about as useful as her other party members. Despite all their quirks, the cast seems to be pretty good at working together, and occasionally they manage to accomplish things that are useful. Occasionally. So clearly the strongest part of this story is the action. I mean, we get epic fights between our heroes and cabbages. Yeah, but really you're reading this book for its humor. The world in the story is somewhere between being a parody of your standard RPG setting and Alice in Wonderland. There's quite a number of things that are just completely ridiculous but also hilarious. Along with the attack of the flying cabbages, we also have dolls that just want to hug you and then explode. Moe plants that are so cute that you just want to take care of them until you die, at which point it uses you as fertilizer. Oh, and of course, Hawkeye runners, which are pretty much Chocobos, if Chocobos really liked running into hard objects over and over again. Our protagonist's character is the other piece of the story that makes its humor brilliant. In far too many ecchi harem series, the protagonist is either a complete dope or at very least far too restrained. But not so in this one. Instead of blushing, stuttering, and oops, I just grabbed your boobs, we get exchanges like this. I said, I want to have Kazuma's children. Okay, I want the first children to be a girl. No, you can't. The firstborn must be a boy. I thought she was an introverted girl, but she can stand her ground when she needs to. So yeah, the way he acts in ecchi scenes is refreshing to say the least. Also, just generally, his way of dealing with problems is pretty amusing. In a duel with someone who's hugely more powerful than you and has an epic sword, steal the sword, problem solved. Got a lake that needs purifying? Dunk your lovely goddess companion in the lake and she'll purify it in no time. Kazuma's a coward, a liar, a cheat, and thoroughly likable in a way I wish more pro-tags were. The biggest problem I can see people having with this series is one of expectations. If you want an epic fantasy adventure, well, this story is closer to slice of life than it is to that. The plot has been fairly episodic, and while there has been progress towards defeating the Great Demon King, it appears to be more accidental than anything else. Also, despite it looking like a harem, there's little in the way of romantic relations between any of the characters. While I personally didn't have any problems with either of these issues, I can see some people being irritated after going into this series expecting something like Is It Wrong? And getting something more like Gekkan Shoujo. The only other comment I have is that this series can be pretty heavy in the fan service department at some points, so if that type of thing bugs you, you might have some issues with this story. A quick summary of everything I've said in this review. This story is funny. Read it. Unless you really don't like ecchi, in which case, don't read it. I don't really think I need to add all that much. No, seriously, that's my summation. If you've already read this series and are looking for something similar, I would either recommend one of two stories that I just mentioned earlier. Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, another harem story set in a fantasy world with RPG mechanics, or Gekkan Shoujo no Zaki-kun, another great comedy series. Anyways, thanks for listening to my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers!